Good. How many of you work with distributed teams? So many hands. How many of you don't at all? Wow, minority. So you all know what I'm talking about. Is there specific things you want to know from this presentation? Okay, I'll go through a case study and then some generalizations, okay? So what we have is, first of all, what is a distributed team? What, in your mind, what's distributed? What does that mean for you?
At least one person in a different location from the rest of the team.
Okay, in a different location. Define different location.
You need a phone to talk to them.
Different building? All right. So this is one interesting example. It's in the same building, 2 different floors. Here we have the Scrum Master and the team on the top floor and the product owner at the bottom. They're in the same building. And yet it was almost as if they were distributed already. Now luckily, it was in the same building, there is a staircase, they could run up if there was a question. So they could answer questions pretty quickly and minimize that loop of developer having a question, needing clarification, getting it answered, and helping them get unstuck. The classical definition of distributed team, of a co-located team, is they should sit within a bus length of each other. It's one of those nebulous units of measure, right? Bus length unit. Why bus length?
It's convenient to walk just that distance.
It's easy to walk, it's easy to scoot over with your chair even, without getting up if you want to.
You can shout and they will hear
You can shout and they can hear you, and you can whisper and they will hear you if they're close enough. How many of you have sat next to somebody and they go, oh my God, your ears perk up, at least mine do. And already you're having communication going on. And that is the aspect that's missing when a team is distributed, no matter the distance. Of course, there's other distributions that are more complex. So here's an ideal setting of a co-located team. They can collaborate. And what happens with collaboration? Your ideas generate more ideas. Other people jump on the idea, and suddenly together you have a new idea. And it's much better, it's much richer. So, about me, I have lived in 6 countries. I speak only 4 languages. Môžem si to povídat česky potom venku. I started as developer, then classical project manager. I was president of PMI chapter in Silicon Valley. I worked in Silicon Valley. I worked at Yahoo for 5 years, was introduced to Scrum in 2005. I introduced Scrum in Nestle IT department in Switzerland, trained 700 people, and I'm now coach at Skype Prague. And this particular case study is from the Yahoo years. It's not from the Skype years because that work is still in progress. But some of the generalizations would apply to any distributed team. So this case study is from the collaboration between Yahoo and Eurosport. You guys know Eurosport, right? Sports site, 5 countries, 5 languages, very, very active. There's always some event going on. Your feeds better work, your website better be up to date. And this was in year 2008. We had a team that was, the majority of it was based in Paris. And then we had people all over the map, in Europe still, plus some collaboration with Ireland, with US, some collaboration with India. Total team size was anywhere from 16 to 25, depending on which period and who all was involved. And at the maximum, it was 25 people. And this was our sports event calendar for that year. And by the way, this was 2008. So in August 2008, on 08/08/08 was the start of the Olympics. If anybody ever tells you you can't do Scrum with a fixed day project, I say, yes, you can. We do. Now, what happens, so this was a year-long project. What happens when you start a year-long project? At least what happened to me when I started this was, okay, those final 2 months, kiss private life goodbye. We'll live in the office, eat in the office, maybe sleep in the office. There won't be anything else going on. Because it will be quite hectic, right? You've been through that? Had some hectic periods. So we did this and said the only way we can manage this is using Scrum, because every 2 weeks we'll release something, and then that means that we'll be able to release something for the big events in January, the big events in February, and have it just in time while still working on the Olympics features in the background. And that's what we did. And the most amazing thing was on 06/08/08, 2 days before the opening day, at 6 p.m., we looked at each other, at least those of us in Paris, and said, that's it. All features are done, or all bugs are fixed. We have 2 days to spare, and we can relax and go home and have dinner with our families. And all of us credit that with doing this project using Scrum method and delivering every 2 weeks. That means every 2 weeks, not only did we have some features that we showed Eurosport, our partner, every 2 weeks something went live. As soon as a feature was finished, tested, checked by the product owner, it got deployed into the test environment, and our partner had access to it and could play with it and test it on their own and give us early feedback. So we didn't do sprint demos because we launched live. Not that. So the lessons learned from that. One is just communication. When you have a team that's so distributed, we know that this is the communication channel richness diagram, where you know that the least information you get is by communicating via paper to another party. Then you can add voice or videotape, and this is one directional, or you can have 2 directional conversation through email, so in writing or with voice or with video, and then face-to-face or face-to-face at a whiteboard or some mechanism to explain the concepts. That is the richest what you can get, which is what you don't have with distributed teams. And we needed to compensate for this. The typical challenges for distributed teams are there's cultural diversity, and you know, I came from the US. I didn't understand that the French and the German would be like this at each other. It's just, wow, incredible. And if you're communicating via electronic mechanisms, you may be missing the verbal, non-verbal, and the vocal cues. That's one of the challenges. And of course, time zone. At least this, the bulk of us were all in Europe. The distance part. The saying says, absence makes the heart grow fonder. But actually, if you don't see somebody, you can forget them. and the person on the other side could feel very alone. And if they're your team member and they feel very alone, what are the chances they will be contributing fully to your project, to your product vision? Lesson number 1, whatever you can do, bring them closer. And that means chit-chats, that means when on phone calls or video conferencing, they speak first. It's one of my rules. The person on the other side, or the person with the least number of people around them, they get priority to voice their opinions, to ask questions, to speak up with their planning poker number. They go first. Don't make them feel alone. Put the other person first. And don't leave them hanging. How often have you written somebody a question via email, via chat, and then waited for an answer? And wait, and wait. And time goes on. Minutes, hours, days, weeks can slip by waiting. One of the rules we had was at each location, somebody was always watching the chat channel. So anybody had a question anywhere, somebody in Munich would have questions, somebody in Paris would know about that, and find an answer and respond as quickly as they could. Even if the response says, we are working on it, we'll get back to you as soon as we find out. But at least the other party knows somebody has acknowledged the question and they're doing something about it. One of the worst things you can do with a distributed team is having radio silence. Somebody's busy working on something. Nobody else at the other locations know about that. Or they could start working on the same thing. Now you have 2 people, 3 people trying to resolve an issue. The biggest misconception about communication is the illusion that it has taken place. I have spoken, I've said my piece, therefore you get it, right? It's a very common misconception. Ask for acknowledgement. Ask for dialogue. The question coming from the other side is actually the best indicator that at least the statement was heard. Maybe the premise is being questioned, and maybe we have an opportunity at a deeper, better, fuller understanding of the topic at hand. In a co-located team, you have this luxury of having daily stand-up, working together, discussing the PBIs, the stories and tasks in a distributed team. You're looking at a tool. Nice, fancy tool, but it still is a tool. You're not dealing with a person anymore. And you miss not just the eye contact, the human contact, but the acknowledgement of commitment, of depth of understanding. One of the nice things about doing stand-ups together is you look at each other. And if you come to stand up day after day after day, the commitment shows. Either people are there and delivering, or they don't belong on the team, or they're not part of the team. That's much harder with distributed teams. So keep the video on as much as you can. Sprint planning, instead of collaborating in the same room. Yes, we do it over Skype. And the passport, the pleasure of having stickies and annotating it and adding our own understandings and moving it from one column to another. We have Jira. All right, and instead of having a collaborative space and we can invite our stakeholders to the sprint demos, we have sprint demos and retrospectives. Yes, over Skype, and it's nice to be able to at least have Skype, but already it's a degree removed. So, really the bottom line is the communication, the hearing what's not said, the finding other ways to compensate for the missing eye contact, body language, and to listen to their listening. Are we actually understanding each other? When on the phone, there is a long pause, a silence, a sigh. That's probably information. Be tuned to that, especially if you're the Scrum Master. And one of the beautiful things about Skype is that we have a product that people love because it connects them. And the most popular use case is actually this grandparents getting acquainted with their grandchildren. And it's so popular because of that video. Because 70% of information is conveyed visually. This is also why task boards are popular and why Agile says, make it visible, post it, let anybody see it. Don't hide your Jira just in the database. Display it so other people can see where we stand. It's called information radiator because even at a glance, we can see what's going on. So in the case of our project, the Olympics project, as much as we could, as much as budget allowed, we traveled together. At the very least, on Wednesday, if we could every second Wednesday, which was our sprint planning day. Remember, we don't do sprint demos. But we did do retrospective. We start the day with how did it go, what do we want to do better, and then go into the sprint planning and probably have 18 people together in one room, and then at some point split out. To do release plannings, product backlogs, discussions about user flows and story flows, the sprint planning itself, and as much as possible, drink together, eat together. There's something that happens at the human level when you share those personal times. The French word companion, or the word companion, comes from the French of sharing bread together, eating together. You build bonds, you build connections. And yes, it meant that if people were coming in on every second Wednesday means we, those in Paris, we don't get to spend time with our families. It is a sacrifice, but it's a sacrifice that's worth building that bond with our other team members. Do as much voice and video. They tell a person, and be aware of the team dynamics theories, the forming, storming, norming, performing, motivation of persons. If you're the Scrum Master, know your team members, what motivates them, what tickles their fancy, what gets them excited, the hierarchy of needs, theory X and Y, their Myers-Briggs profiles, all of that is useful information. Because ultimately, for each person, you want to get a sense of what's in it for them, what excites them. Luckily on this team, we had some people who were avid sports fans. At work, they would work on a sports site for 8, 9 hours, and they'll go home and watch more sports. And then the next day, they'll come to the product owner, how about we do this? That was really cool. Understand what motivates them. And if you can't do the lunches and bowling together or other activities, arrive early, get personal, share pictures, tease each other, build relationships, build rapport. Make it your job to build a bridge. Spend time talking about their interests, getting personal. Yes, this was a team member. We had a theater night that we put ourselves during one of those Wednesdays. And ask them what they think. Initiate a conversation, especially if they're the ones who are traveling in. Risk number 1 for software is building the wrong thing, and missing communication increases the likelihood of building the wrong thing. So communicate, communicate, communicate. Over-communicate is better than under. Align your incentives. This is a 6-person taxi in Philippines on a motorbike. Appreciate, show appreciation to each other. Trust each other. That means to spend time to, oh yeah, I already said that. And have a common purpose. Agree on a common purpose, on team charter and so on. And respect each other. And yes, that's the Paris team. That's the end of our presentation. And bonus for you, avoid that. Thank you. Comments, questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
How did you motivate people in Paris to spend their time in the team, coming to Paris every second Wednesday, spending time with their family?
Oh, we're having a sprint planning on Wednesday. You'll be there. Well, the sprint planning, it was pretty understood. But spending evening time, it's like, can you please, I mean, you find whatever way works. And
So you just keep trying, even like if they're dressing as well. I want to go to the theater, I'm not sure.
try different. Can you go on the theater on Thursday? Is it still playing on Thursday? Can you go on the weekend?
Well, normally we become friends and then it's just like,
But you need to start somewhere.
You need to start somewhere, especially when the French and the Germans did not want to talk to each other. You have to start somewhere. We started with a lunch that was brought in. So you sort of can't avoid it, and you have to talk and build from there.
Sorry, I need to break the discussion because